So in this segment, we're going to be talking about supermarkets warning against moving back to imperial measurements. So Britain's retailers have warned the Prime Minister that his plan to bring back imperial measurements will push up the price of goods because they would need relabelling, just as consumers are battling the worst cost of living crisis for a generation. Now, it's important to remember this, right? If it's the case that it's optional for businesses, that's fine. But for businesses to export those, food goods or whatever they are that are labelled in ounces or imperial measurements, to export those to the EU, they would have to be converted into metric measurements anyways. So if it's a dual labelling system or an optional one, it's fine for the most part. But if it's mandatory that it has to be in imperial measurements, that's going to really push up the costs and the bureaucracy for businesses, which is just stupid, to be honest. The British Retail Consortium, which represents some of the biggest supermarkets and retail chains in the country, said that reintroducing measurements in pounds and ounces would be a distraction from the huge problems facing the country. And that's what it's designed to do. It's designed to grab headlines and distract people from the real problems, which are the cost of living. That's what it's really designed for. The move is already being dubbed as a benefit of Britain leaving the EU and has been embraced by some pro-Brexit politicians. But the thing is, this has never been an issue so long as they have the metric measurements near the, that are visible near the imperial measurements. The reasons why businesses and markets stop bothering is because it's pointless having two types of measurements. Critics have accused ministers of producing the policy in an attempt to distract from the public from Partygate scandal and an economic crisis caused by surging price of energy. Let's not forget here that food prices are already 6% higher than they were, in years gone by. And if they start doing this stuff with imperial measurements, it's going to go up even more. And this is a pointless one as well. Andrea Martinez, Assistant Director of Food at BRC, said the price of groceries has risen by about 6% in the past year, and add cost. By going back to this, it adds costs and complexity if existing products are required to be relabeled. Because if you're a big manufacturer of food, you're going to have to go back through all of your products, right, and add the imperial measurements. You're going to have to do a lot of conversions, etc., and you're going to have to get your packaging redone as well, which is going to cost money. Martinez pointed out that shops were already allowed to indicate imperial measurements alongside metric ones. Britain formally brought into the metric system in 1965, which is way before we joined the EU, with some exceptions such as milk and beer, which are still sold in pints. So the argument that the EU banned us from buying products in imperial measurements is ludicrous. People still buy beer by pints. Milk is sold in pints as well. There's still millilitres on the side, but typically when I look in the shop, I'm looking at the amount of pints for some reason. A group of fruit and vegetable traders called the Metric Martyrs, which is just so overdramatic, came to prominence 20 years ago when they began campaigning for traders to sell products in imperial measurements. They could already do that. That's the problem. The EU dropped demand in 2007. The thing is, right, if they have both measurements together, there's not an issue. That was the problem. Joe Harrison, chief executive of the National Market Traders Federation, said it made little sense for stores to shift back to the imperial system when most young people had grown up with metric measurements. To be fair, when I go to the market, it's just a load of stuff in a bowl, like it's not measured, it's measured by container really at that point. Harrison said, for what purpose? Seems like it would just be hanging on to the past nostalgia, which is true. It is just nostalgia at this point. It's pointless, especially when imperial measurements make no sense anyways, because the Americans have their own system of imperial measurements, so you're not really benefiting anyone. You're just going to make it even more confusing. Meanwhile, the Chartered Trading Standards Institute said this move had the potential to confuse customers who've only been taught in metric. John Harriman, chief executive of the CTSI, said, we understand the desire to create a feel-good factor, especially during a time of many profound economic challenges. What I would say is that if you want to make a real feel-good factor, start doing stuff with the cost of living, really help people, but the government aren't doing that. However, at a time when consumers and businesses are already feeling the pinch from higher prices and inflation, it is really important that any proposed measures don't bamboozle the public on value for money and the prices of everyday items, or add unnecessary cost and confusion to businesses. Because that's what's happening here. This will just confuse people. Every time I see a cup or a measurement in imperial measures, I just get confused because I don't know what it means, and a lot of people won't know what it means. It's going to increase costs dramatically. This is so pointless. And let's not forget, this headline crops up once in a while anyways. Boris Johnson repeatedly to reportedly bring back imperial measurements. This was just in May. You've got another one here from March. You've got another one here. There's no date on it, but it's probably fairly old. And you've got this one, another one which is fairly old as well. Which that's what they're trying to do, is just distract people with this imperial nonsense, which is standard for this government. Whenever there's a crisis, they distract you with dead cats and all sorts of nonsense. But anyways, I'm going to leave it there. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Like, comment, share, subscribe, support the channel at Patreon if you can, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.